So, Rich, we're here at Ascot. Slightly cooler climes here at UK racing than Trinidad.
My great-grandfather came from India to the Caribbean, to Trinidad, as an indentured labourer to work on the cane fields, 100 years ago. And on a weekend, my dad used to be taken by his dad, my granddad, to spend time with his granddad. And during those times, my dad used to be fascinated by the fact that on a Saturday, my great-grandfather used to get all dressed up in his best suit, put on a Panama hat and a cane. He didn't apparently need the cane, but he used to be all dressed up and he used to go off to the races. That was how my dad first became fascinated with horses and horse racing. And so throughout his whole life, he always felt that as soon as he earned enough money to have an involvement in racing, he was always going to go down that route. And because of his love of it, and my great-grandfather's and my father's, then I fell in love with it from a very early age. From the age of 3, my dad had built a stud farm in Trinidad, and he came over to the UK, imported horses, took them back, and so we had that link between the UK and the Caribbean, and I wanted to know more about racing over here. So the die was cast from a very, very early age.
Where does it happen where Rish goes, okay, bang, did you want... We've obviously seen the exploits of the jockey that we can come on to later on.
Let's not talk about that.
Obviously there's the training and the actual horseman side of it. You've skipped the horseman side of it. So which route did you take?
It's a good question, Josh. I came to school here, boarding school, when I was 12. When I first went to boarding school, so I had one term at a prep school in Bury St Edmunds in order to do my common entrance exam to go to my boarding school, which I did, passed, go to the boarding school. So the first term, I missed the first term of boarding school because I was doing that prep for the common entrance exam. So when I started in January, everybody in that year had all formed their little bonds and their friendships, and guess who was left out? Someone who was going to feel a little bit uneasy anyway, because I've come from the Caribbean, I look really different, and it's cold as well. It's freezing cold in January, and I'm in a strange environment. I'd never been away from home anywhere other than to my grandparents' place or to friends or anything like that. So when I first arrived at boarding school, it was at the Lee School in Cambridge, I really struggled to begin with. So this is how I got through it. I used to go to the local newsagents and buy every single racing book that I could find.
I wasn't dissimilar at school. I was the only non-white in a school of 1,500 kids, and I remember my mum sending me the first time, and a couple of weeks in she said, "So son, did you play with anybody today?" And I turned round to her and I went, "No, but they let me watch." And my mum just burst into tears. But like you say, it did drive me in a different way. So the only other non-white Rish in my school was a Rastafarian TV technician. He was called Michael Walker. And I wish I could find him now. I hope he's actually watching this and he gets hold of me, because he was massively into horse racing. After registration in the afternoon, during the Cheltenham Festival in March, I go and sign in, and then rather than going to lessons, I go to his television technician room, full of TVs, and he had a Ladbrokes telephone betting account, and we used to sit there punting away, probably 50p a race on every race at Cheltenham. And I remember the deputy head, called Mr. Payne, he came in and he saw me in this room, and I thought, I'm in for the biggest telling off of my entire life, could be kicked out of school for this. And he came in and he went, "Right lads, what do we fancy the next?" And sat down and we watched I think the last one, my last year there was Desert Orchids Gold Cup in 89, and you've got 3 guys jumping up and down. We all backed him and away we went. So no, it is interesting in terms of how you follow that passion through school. Following racing isn't cool. You're more of the geek in the class than the cool kid in the class. So we've trod our own furrow, really, because not only do we look different, we're massively into different things as well in terms of racing that people don't know a lot about.
Because you know that it's not the cool sport to be involved in, seemingly, when you're a youngster, and yet you feel that passion for it, you buy into the solitude a little bit, and you say, I don't care. I really don't care. And that, I think, actually helps you in later life to be able to go, I'm proud of what I'm doing, and I don't mind what other people say, and I don't mind being judged for it, because I really like this and I'm going to go down the route with it. So it did, I think in the long run, it helped to strengthen character a little bit. I mean, you and I have spoken a lot about diversity, about racism, about inclusion, and I think a lot of the conversation stems from the fact that we've grown up with barriers. Whether the barriers are physical, like the segregation between sections of enclosures, etc., or whether the barriers are more subliminal, subconscious, that we don't really, it's not something that we can put our finger on, not something that manifests itself every day, but you know it exists. And that's the nub of the issue, the fact that we're trying to move those barriers down in order that, not that people can just do whatever they want, but that they can actually be who they are, which is something that I'm quite keen on for the future, because I think very early on, we go back to school days, uni days and stuff like that, because I was very different, or I felt I was very different, and I know this is a personal thing and some people may be different, but I felt like it was all important to just fit in. Just wanted to fit in all the time because you didn't want to stand out. I remember I suffered racist abuse very early on at school when I was 13 years old. Within 24 hours of being at my new boarding school, I went to find someone who was a former pupil at the prep school that I'd been at and been told by that headmaster, find him, he'll show you around. I went to meet him, I knocked on his study door. He was in the 5th form and I was obviously in the 3rd form, and I knocked on the study door, opened the door, and he saw me and he said, what do you want? And I said, I went to Noton Court Prep School and I just wanted to say hello. Mr. Desh, the headmaster, told me to come and say hi. And he looked at me and he swore and he said, go away, I just want to be on my own. You can F off and use the P word. And I had never been subject to that racism before. I was 13 years old, I was on my own, and I was devastated. I walked back crying, happy to admit it, cried back to my dorm and my house. And on the way back there, whether it was a subconscious or conscious thing, I immediately sort of went into that vein of behavior where I went, do you know what, I don't want to be different. I don't want to look any different. I just want to be like them, and I just want to be, I want an easy life. I just want to fit in. I don't want to be someone that's going to stand out and going to be subject to that sort of pain, because that's what I felt. I felt pain, and in any walk of life, you don't want to feel that. So you'll change your behaviour to avoid that. So that's what I did when I was a child, and so part of me is disappointed in the way I've lived my life, a little bit, because I've felt for quite a lot of my life I've tried to fit in. In the future, I'd like to be involved in projects. I'm part of the diversity in racing group in racing. I know you know a bit about that. I would like that to be the type of organisation that gets involved in order to break down those barriers, to say, do you know what, you don't have to be concerned about being different. You can be who you are and you can still achieve a level of success in society.
It's bringing a bit of colour to the party in the industries that we're hugely passionate about, and I think it is that unconscious bias that people do have, because otherwise we're seeing the same. No one sees us as any different. No. It's only us really now that sees us as any different, but that's because we've climbed over the majority of barriers. If
you have people who will suppress themselves or suppress something about them because of an incident that they've had to endure because of the way they appear, or whatever it is, whether it's someone who's gay, because you're female, or whatever it is, if you have to suppress something because of who you are by nature, then there's an issue here, because it means that there's a prejudice that's preventing you and others from being who you are, therefore progressing and being allowed to live your life.
So do you think sport, and especially racing, is behind society? And if so, how much?
Racing is behind the times, I'm afraid to say. You think about the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement has been going for a significantly long time now in 2020. How many people in racing have put up their hand to say either I'm supporting Black Lives Matter or taken a knee or whatever? There's been no gesture whatsoever from anybody in the sport to say they're supporting that. Now, why is that? Is it because they don't care? Is it because they're afraid to put their head above the parapet? Or is there another reason?
Racing has sat back yet again and not said, we're going to go on the front foot through this. And I think that's through purely that they don't actually know, and they need leading themselves. They don't want change because they go, oh, there's nothing to see here, nothing to see here. When actually there is, the world is changing, and racing has got to realise that it's got to change as well.
You know, we've had the discussion before, and we spoke about it on the group, the diversity group, saying we want people with the respect in racing, who have the strong image and have a say above and beyond just the normal person, to say that we have some solidarity with what's being said. We have solidarity with people who have suffered oppression. We have, when Michael Holding and Ebony Rainford Brent did those pieces on Sky, I mean, I was really moved. And that's the thing, you know, it really does move you emotionally to watch something like, you know, I've been lucky enough to know Michael Holding as a great fast bowler, one of the greatest of all. Michael, you were definitely the best thing to watch as a cricketer running in. But as a person, he is so principled. It didn't surprise me that he stood up to say those things. It didn't surprise me whatsoever. What surprised me was the pain and the emotion that came behind it. I was taken aback by that. Because he's normally such a man in control of his emotions, and he's normally quite a reserved human being. But he let himself go, and we saw the real Michael Holding there for a moment.
But he's a great orator. I found it really, really tough, and I actually rang my dad and said, "No, what do you think?" And he was exactly the same. The only other time I've ever felt that emotional about it was actually watching Obama's inauguration.
And that's progression.
Yeah.
And that's what we want across the board. That's all we want. And what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
That's only going to make things better for everybody. But people don't want it to happen because they are afraid that it's going to change things for them, which we understand. But it's not going to change things for them. It's going to change things for people who haven't had opportunity. It's going to change things for people who have been suppressed. And we need to remove that. What we have found in our time in the sport is the fact that people have been put by the wayside because of the colour. People have been put by the wayside because of sex, or you know, whether they prefer to be gay or not. So it's a very difficult one, I think. But what I find significant is that since, for example, the diversity group began, the BHA began the diversity group a few years ago, and it's become much more of a conversation for people to talk about it, I've found that the pushback in racing has been unpleasant and unnecessary, because again, they close themselves off straight away as soon as anyone suggests maybe some change might bring about good. No, why would he want to change? We've done it like this for hundreds of years, let's keep doing this. And people come up to me on the race course and they say to me, you know, this diversity thing that you're talking about, people are talking about, well, there's not a problem. There's not a problem at all, because look at the stable yards. Look at the amount of people that work in stable yards. Yeah, okay. How many people who've worked in stable yards have progressed from being a member of the stable staff to becoming a trainer?
Yeah, exactly.
Why not?
Yeah.
Because guess what? The way it is that all trainers are white, or 99.9% of trainers are white, and that people of colour, they're all stable staff, and they don't go on to become trainers.
Well, you can't see, you can't be.
And then people go, what about Saeed bin Saror? What about the Arabs? What about Mohammed Mubarak, or whatever it is? Yeah, they've already trained, they're trainers in other countries. They've come here now and they're training here, but they're not. They haven't come through the ranks of going through stable staff, assistant trainer, and then going on to become trainer. That hasn't happened. B were pretty clear to me that being of an ethnic background was a huge positive.
Let's go back to your broadcasting phenomenal career, Ish. But we talked about, you started off with At the Races.
Yeah.
And then how did the BBC come a knocking?
So February 2003, I went into At the Races, normal day, going into the studio, and when I went in, Brad Higgins, who ran the first At the Races, said to me, he said, just come in and shut the door. So he went, and the first thing he said was, your 15 minutes of fame starts now, young man.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay, all right.
In his Aussie accent.
Yeah, he said, look, the Beeb have asked if they can speak to you, and I said yes. So that was it. I went to TV Centre, got walked around, but B were pretty clear to me that being of an ethnic background was a huge positive. And I do believe that being of an ethnic background has helped in that. In fact, like I said, that was told to me by somebody who worked for the Beeb. And I think I don't regret it, because I personally have gone on to work at some events and do some things that I'm extremely fortunate and privileged to have done. But part of me then goes, I'm only here because, or part of the reason why I'm here is because I look the way I am, and other people are going to think that. So therefore, I'm always going to be worried that I'm not seen, that I'm doing what I'm doing on merit, and people are thinking he's actually not that good. He's only doing it. If he was the same colour as me, he wouldn't have had this opportunity, and it could have been me. It then made me think to myself, it shouldn't be like this, should it? We shouldn't be worried about what person looked like, whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's someone of colour or not of colour, whether it's someone who's gay, who's not gay. Can't we just be really one level for everybody, and we're all there, we're all at the same level, and just, you're better than me, I'm better than you, whatever it is. Not worried about, we need to tick a box here, we need to tick a box there. I just want things to be done because this is the way the world is.
So when you joined the BBC, they had all the big sports rights going, the Olympics, Wimbledon, the Masters, and I know you're like me, you're a massive sports fan. What is it like meeting some of these superstars, Tiger Woods, for instance, or Seve Ballesteros?
Yeah, you pinch yourself. I mean, very quickly, I'll tell you the story of the very first time I interviewed Tiger, which was the Masters in 2013. And on the Friday, he hit the pin on 15, the ball went in the water, he dropped it in the wrong spot, should have been disqualified, didn't. There was a little bit of a debate as to whether or not he should have been in there or not.
I'm sure you asked him that, did you? Straight out?
Going into Tiger Woods, like one of my sporting heroes, but my first time at the Beeb doing the Masters, or my first time at the Masters for the Beeb, and I'm in the interview room. So there's myself, the NBC reporter, the Sky Sports reporter. So the three of us are in there, and then Tiger's agent puts his head through the door as he's finishing his round on the Saturday, and he says, "Listen, Tiger's coming in. Who's going to interview him?" So all three of us put our hands up. So he goes, "Cool, BBC, Sky, NBC." So waiting, and he goes, "Just remember, guys, no chat about what happened yesterday. Just going to talk about today, right? Okay, golf. We're going to talk about golf." So I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't want to upset his agent. I don't want to upset Tiger. But I don't want to upset my bosses, and it's my first gig, right? I'm being torn to shreds here, like, mentally. And then so the other thing was, I forgot to tell you, is that on the Wednesday of the Masters week, you can put yourself in the ballot to play the course on the Monday. So I'd put myself in the ballot. So I'm now waiting for Tiger to come in. He does the first interview with NBC, which they kind of talk about the subject, and he was fine. So I'm next to interview Tiger. So my producer says, "Oh, can you just ask him to wait 1 minute and we'll come live?" So I'm like, "Tiger, would you just wait just 1 minute and we'll do this live in the video?" So Tiger's like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And then my producer says, "Hey Rish, did you put yourself in the ballot to play on Monday?" So it's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You're in, you've got it, you've got the gig, or you're playing on Monday." So now I'm about to interview Tiger Woods. There's all sorts of deliberations going on in my head, and
you're going to play Augusta.
I'm going to be playing Augusta on the Monday. So, and he starts asking, he goes, "Have you got clubs? Have you got your clubs with you? You got shoes and clothes and stuff to play on the Monday? You're going to have to change your flight." So I'm like, "No, I haven't." I'm now looking at the camera and going, "I haven't got anything. I haven't got my clubs. I haven't got my my flight. Gosh, would I pay for that and change it? Or what's going to happen here?" Anyway, in the meantime,
Tiger said you can use my plane or something. Surely.
Sorry, using my clubs. Sorry, left-handed time. Anyway, so about 10 seconds to the start of the interview, and my producer goes, "Right, Rish, we're coming to you live in 10, 9, 8. Oh, by the way, I was only joking. You're not playing on Monday. 4, 3, 2. Cue, you're live with Tiger." And I'm like, it was awful. But I asked him about it.
Did Tiger know about the joke afterwards?
No,
you told
he
him?
didn't. But I have told him.
So he still thinks you're not that good an interviewer?
Oh, absolutely,
really?
yeah. My time at the Beeb, there's not really much I can say in the way of, focused racism or people who are particularly racist. I mean, you get at events, you get people that say inappropriate things, and you kind of want to move on because you want to avoid what's been said because of the pain and slight embarrassment, etc. So you let that fly. But there have been one or two incidents where, and again, it's not so much in broadcasting, but sort of just in life where it's involved in sport, and you bump into people and you end up with a racist experience. I remember going to an award ceremony at the Dorchester once, and myself and my other half, we were a little bit late. So as you walk in through the revolving doors, she went off to the ladies, and I was standing there waiting for her to go in. And a couple that I knew, I'd actually sat next to this guy's wife once, and they both walked in. They were also late, and the guy just walks up straight to me. I was dressed there in my tux. I thought I looked quite smart, but clearly not. And he walked straight up to me and he said, "Toilets?" And I said, "Oh, well, the ladies down there, but I'm not sure where the gents are." He goes, why don't you? You work here, don't you?" And I was like, "No, I know you because I've interviewed you and I sat next to your wife." And
Wow.
He was
Was
and
he
then his
mortally
wife
embarrassed?
reminded him who I was, and I joked and I said, "Oh, this is a great story for a gossip columnist." Kind of. In fairness, I shouldn't have joked because it was a little bit embarrassing in that sense.
Yeah.
I should have taken it more seriously, but I didn't know how to. In all honesty, I didn't know how to deal with it so front on, and so I just went, "Oh, this would be a great story for a gossip columnist," and he just said, "Don't you dare."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh yeah, okay, fair enough." Yeah. There have been occasions where it's been slightly more. There's been slightly more intent behind it. I remember being at the Breeders' Cup in Arlington at 2002 actually. So I'd only just been working on television for a bit, and I went to the Breeders' Cup. Obviously, it wasn't that far away from when 9/11 occurred. So I was a little bit conscious of going to America because there's a lot of tension. Anyway, I remember playing pool midnight in the hotel bar with where the press were all staying.
Working hard again.
It had been a long day, blowing off some steam on the pool table. And a member of the media that I didn't know very well at the time was sitting in the bar with an American journalist. And the British member of the media called me over. And he said, "Just come over here for a second." So I walked over, very friendly as always, trying to, just fit in. And he said, "This guy's got some questions for you." So the American journalist started asking me, where do I come from? What passport did I travel to America on? How did I get through customs? And all the while he was asking me these inappropriate questions, the British journalist was sitting there laughing, giggling, drinking his beer and encouraging what was going on. It's a very long journey, and people look at the duration of the journey that this would entail in order to get to where we really want to. They're not prepared to put the work in, which is understandable because it is quite an effort. You're going to have to change so many things, including your own way of being. So it's not easy, but what is good in life, that is.
Well, thanks, Rish. It's been an absolute pleasure, as it has been for the last 20 years of knowing you, and it will be for the next 20 years. Let's keep kicking.